Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cool Table. We are here to talk about the third book in the Bridgerton Book Club, an offer from a gentleman. That gentleman is Benedict Bridgerton. We have a lot to talk about this evening. The first thing we want to talk about as we introduce ourselves is a question we asked on our Twitter page, which is, you're about to be the heroine in a classic Disney retelling romance novel. Which classic would you pick? And the choices we gave were Cinderella, for obvious reasons, Beauty and the Beast, and Sleeping Beauty. Who would you guys pick? How about you, Beth?
Hi, everybody. I'm Beth. If you're joining us from wherever, welcome. This is a bathtub in my sitting room because we're redoing my bedroom, my main bathroom, and we haven't done it yet. And so the bathroom isn't here. So I'm sorry. So I think for obvious reasons, Beauty and the Beast, the library is fantastic. I think that Beauty has Belle has like the deepest inner life. She's more sure of who she is. I think that Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty are fairly bland in terms of who they are. And, the Beast, it's almost kind of not his fault what's going on. Beauty and the Beast, if I had to be. What about you, Julie?
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie. I would probably go with Sleeping Beauty. One, cartoon Prince Philip is very good looking. Like, I think that was my first crush. I thought, what are these feelings I'm feeling? And then my mom and dad had to sit down and talk with me. Like, that was about 6 years old. Cause I was like, he's pretty. And it was like, it's time to have the talk. She gets to nap. So that's not a bad spell to be under. And she looks amazing when she wakes up. She doesn't have bed hair. Like, she has good bed hair when she wakes up. And she's got a bunch of fairy godmothers taking care of her. And eventually there would be this really successful reboot, and you would get a Maleficent. You'd get a witch that would look over you. And she looks like Angelina Jolie with very striking cheekbones. So Sleeping Beauty for me. What about you, Andy?
I rebel against this question. I am adding another princess because I just don't think it's fair that Ariel was not included. She wears a seashell bra, and I don't think I need to say anything else besides that. Seashell bra. The voice, so much singing involved. I'm like, yeah, Ariel.
So of the four options, Beauty and the Beast won overwhelmingly won their poll. And next up was Sleeping Beauty. And last, I think there was one vote for it, was Cinderella. If I was picking, I picked Beauty and the Beast for the library. However, if it had been an option, none of us want to be any of them. We want to be the hero in these situations. Yeah. I want to be Prince Philip or Prince Charming or the Beast in this situation.
I think that Belle is the hero of Beauty and the Beast. She fixes everything. She's the one who's having the adventure. Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, things happen to them. Belle makes shit happen. So when I said she has the deepest inner life, she's the best heroine out of all of those. Ariel also makes shit happen. Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty are making nothing happen.
You know what they're making happen? No, you're wrong.
Naps.
You know what she's making? That's right. She looks damn good when she wakes up from a nap, well rested. And we all know what a good night of sleep will do for you.
You are very Enneagram 9 for you to love a nap before your inner life.
That's right. So
good job.
Nap for your health, people. Nap for your health.
Well, the reason, of course, that we're bringing up Disney princesses and a retelling is because An Offer from a Gentleman very clearly rips off a Cinderella trope. Okay. So first off, what do you guys think about that? How do you feel about the Cinderella trope?
I hate it. Hi, Emily. Hi, Emma. Hi, Brett. Those of you that are in the chat, I wanted to say hello to everybody. I don't love the Cinderella trope in this book. Probably because it's just so one for one. If there was a little bit of the masquerade thing, but without the evil stepmother and stepsisters, that'd be one thing. Or if it was just evil stepmother, girl has to go off on her own, but without the masquerade and the glove and the midnight changeover, okay. But all of it together with the magic part, it's so heavy-handed when like most of these books and most of our Regency romance novels aren't like that it just pulls me out of it in a way that I don't enjoy, especially the very beginning of the book.
Right. Like you said, it's very much waiting on him, waiting for him. And for me, I feel like it's done a lot. It's a trope that's done quite a bit through, the Cinderella, mistaken identity, evil stepmother. And like Beth said, it went to the point where it was almost like I wouldn't have been shocked if mice came in and like sang to her and then redid her entire dress.
There are rats.
Yes, she does. And I'm sure they sing to her and one of them goes, "Hey, my name's Gus." I'm sure that would happen. So I didn't feel it. I just didn't feel this one. I didn't feel it.
I thought it was fine. I don't know. At least if they're gonna do it though, like make the prince like worthwhile. And Benedict is like such a slug for I don't know why I hate him so much, but he just has no personality. He's such a jerk.
That's why. It's not just the fact that he has no personality. There's something, he does a few things, I'm sure we'll get into that just made us all go, no.
Yes. So let's recap kind of what the story is. Sophie is the bastard daughter of an earl, who he says she's his ward. He raises her, or his home out in the country home. The housekeeper raises her for the first 6 or 7, maybe 10 years of her life before 7 years of her life before he gets married to Araminta, which is the best evil mom name ever. So well done. With two stepsisters, and they treat her terribly. And then he dies, and she's left basically as their slave. I mean, lady's maid, but unpaid lady's maid. So essentially their slave. And she hides the dowry, and it's just very, very evil. One day, the housekeeper dresses her up in like her grandmother's old dress, or her probably grandmother's old dress, and the gloves and the whole thing. It smells musty. She goes to a masquerade, and it is insta love with Benedict. What'd you guys think about the meet cute? Because I have one particular line that really bothered me is after they're starting to like get romantic on the terrace together. He like grabs her arm, and it says that he licks the inside of the crease of her arm. And he was like, "Did you like that? I knew you would." the crease of her arm. Anyway, what'd you guys think about that meet cute?
I mean, I find it, I love a ball. I love the idea, like, when we talked about Bridgerton, the show, we talked about when Daphne comes down the staircase and everybody turns and looks at her. Like, I don't love that. I've never loved that trope. Like, it always bothers me. I feel like the only time it works is in My Fair Lady. And then every time somebody else does it, I'm like, no, you are not Audrey Hepburn, and you're not wearing that awesome tiara. Get out. So I dislike that part of it, but at least it doesn't seem like, because it's from Benedict's perspective, that everyone has stopped and looked at her. I mean, that there's a little bit of that. It's just him. But the magic he feels and the tingles he feels and all of that. I even though it's Regency, and we've said before, Regency romance is steeped in fantasy anyway, I like for the fantasy part to just be the hot dukes and viscounts, etc., and not actual fantasy. I'm just not, I mean, if you're not going to actually be fairies and witches, etc., steep the love itself in realism. For me, that's how I prefer it.
Right. And for me, the previous 2 books, there was a build-up. There was always a meet cute, but there was a build-up to the attraction. It was, okay, there is a physical attraction, but for Benedict, it was like a physical attraction, and I'm going to marry this person tomorrow. And her face was covered in a mask. All he knows is like she could have taken off the mask, and it just, for me, just felt like so quick. And his attraction was completely physical, but he was like, I must marry this woman. Well, why? They barely talked. And then he licks her arm. Did she taste good? Did he feel a pulse? And he's like, that's the one. You know? Was it the musty smell of her dress?
So over in the comments, Brett says, I like the fact that his focus was on her because she was being genuinely smiling and being real, which is true, but it made me feel like she was like his manic pixie dream girl. Like he didn't actually have an interest in Sophie as a person. He just had this idea. And part of that might be that he's an artist and he likes beautiful things. But it just felt very contrived. So what about their second meeting? When she's about to be raped, basically gang raped at that party. How did you feel about whenever he came in and saved her? Like good, bad? How did he handle that?
Yay. I mean, I appreciate the fact that he saved her. That was nice. That he didn't like let her get, I mean, I don't even know. I feel like so useless about this book because I'm like, it was fine. And fine things happen. I think, I don't know. The ball meeting, I have to say I had to go back for a moment because it, you know, that scene in Ever After, like I wanted it to be that and it wasn't that.
She wasn't wearing wings.
She wasn't wearing wings that Leonardo da Vinci made in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah, it's a total shame. I mean, I think if you think about the first meeting, there are good, I mean, the meeting itself, when he's like obsessed with her is one thing. As the ball moves forward, there's more good stuff. The fact that like what, I forget who said this. Oh, well, Brett just said, like the fact that he's falling and thinking real, but like there's more going on as they're dancing and he's teaching her how to waltz. There's a little bit of like attraction, but it's not really anything. You're right. It's not about Sophie. It's not even really about Benedict. And she's having this fantasy night. She's not really thinking anything either. And when you contrast that with like the way Daphne and Simon meet, and, you know, and even the way, especially the way Anthony and Kate meet, I mean, you're talking worlds apart in terms of whether or not you're falling in love with somebody because of who they are and whether or not it's just like insta attraction. And the insta attraction is fine if it's steeped in some kind of realism, but this is full on fantasy, which for some people, the magic part of it is fun. For me, like I said, I want a little bit more realism on that. Right. As far as the second meeting goes, this I like better. If this had been when they had met, had there been no Cinderella prologue, I would have preferred that as a meeting. I mean, it's very tropey, right? Of the hero coming in and rescuing her from a band of brigands, but at the very least, he is, you know, adept and, you know, courteous and chivalrous and doing all of the things that he should do as a Bridgerton man and as a Regency hero in that moment. He doesn't do anything shitty until they get to the cottage. Before that, great.
I mean, pretty much everything after he rescues her, he just does shitty stuff after that. Like
that's exactly it.
Yeah, I remember saying in our last book club, I called Anthony like an honorable dick, like because he's an asshole, but like he has good intentions behind it. I think that Benedict is just a dick. I don't know where it came from because no one else in his Colin's not like that. Anthony's not like that. So for Benedict to come out and be like, I rescued you. I want you. You're mine now. And the only way for you to earn your freedom is through being mine was just, It seems off. But so he's sick. She's nursing him back to health. How do we feel about that trope?
It is a cute. Okay, I do actually like, that is one of the tropes that I actually like. I love the person is sick, the other person has to nurse them back to health. It is essentially a trope if I've seen it both ways where it's the woman who is sick and the man's had to nurse her back to health. And I actually like that in the sense of we saw the warmth of Sophie, not necessarily Benedict. I didn't like the moment because of Benedict. I liked it because Sophie, because that's her instinct, is to care. It's to take care. And she knows who he is. And everyone's like, in the chat right now, as everyone's saying, is she knows who he is. He doesn't know who she is. Rightly so, right? That's the that's the whole point of Cinderella. But it just shows us, okay, she's a caring soul. She does not, who, by the way, Benedict does not deserve.
I just wish that she had been the one who was sick. Because if she was sick, then at least it would have endeared him to me a little. You know, like I don't even know what to say. Like, he's like basically like, you're my prisoner. Like, it's like, save it, Patty Hearst. I'm not buying any Stockholm Syndrome today.
I just
like,
wouldn't want her. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
And no, it's fine. I just didn't understand why she was like, I mean, he's sick. She could have just been like, well, thanks and peace. Like, you turn out not to be such a gentleman. Like, I'm going to go.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's hot, but I don't buy I just needed one night of like, I don't know.
I mean, the sick trope, nursing somebody back to health, the sick trope usually comes a little bit later in a relationship so that they can get horny with each other. It's meant to be like an only one bed situation / even his dream that he has. And like she pulls him down to the bed or whatever, and she kisses him. That's meant to be later on so that they can get hot. And I like that. And I like it in books where it's not necessarily like the last thing that happens. But it's one of my favorite tropes, and yet you're 100% right. Would be much better in this book had Sophie been the one who was sick, and he was able to show some compassion and care for her. And the compassion that he's showing for her this is the most compassionate Benedict gets in the entire novel, is the moment where he saves her, takes her to the cottage, and says, I'm going to make sure you have a place. Like, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to take you to the inn or whatever. I'm going to make sure that you can stay with my family or whatever. I'm not going to leave you destitute. That's the best he gets. And it ends so quickly because he's sick before they ever even get there. So it's over after that. And it's unfortunate.
Right. I wonder though, if like to have her be the sick one, again, it's that rescue thing. It would have been Benedict coming to her rescue once again. So it's at the ball, then rescuing from being raped. Now she's sick. I get it. I agree. I think it would have been better if it was reversed. So we could all feel the way we feel, you know, about like how we look at Anthony, or later on, how we're going to look at Colin.
Well, I mean, I think at the ball, she's the one who rescues him to some degree. He's bored, doesn't want to dance with Penelope Featherington, doesn't want to see his mother, and he gets an excuse to like go out to a private terrace. I mean, there's not a whole lot of rescue going on in the ball. She probably would have had a much better time had he left her alone, and she could have danced with a whole bunch of gentlemen that night, or at least walked around and seen more pretty dresses.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that stood out for me from the book overall is the power dynamics that were at play here, because really the only time that Sophie had the upper hand was when she was nursing him. And even then she's wearing his clothes and they're falling off all the time. And it's like, you know, she can't leave. And the Crabtrees are there. And then her reputation is going to be hurt. So like she's never in a position of power. And what I like about Regency romance or historical romance is that these men who are so powerful get like turned upside down and knocked on their ass by these women. And the power gets switched by that love that happens. And that I don't feel like that really happened here, because she was in such a position he saw her as a maid. And so she was the lowest of the low class. So when they go down to the lake and he sees her and she's like, okay, I got to go. She says no. And he's like, no, you don't. And he grabs her by the ankle and yanks her to the ground. And he's like, no, you're going home with me. That was wild. And it was not hot to me. Like, that scene should have been super hot, and it was not hot to me at all.
No, who want to talk about the pond scene? It should have been very, very hot. It should have, I mean, and it starts out that way because she's peering at him from around a tree and she's like, wow, I wish a big gust of wind would come by and just swoop the water up so I can see more of his on-ramps. And it's exciting. And you're like, yeah, let's let that happen. Let's see that. And it doesn't happen. And instead, he's just like, I know you're there. Come out from behind the tree. He's goading her. She's like, I'm just going to go back to the house. And he's like, don't you dare. And I mean, she has no recourse at this point. She's still at his cottage. She doesn't have a place yet. He could still throw her out. You're right. The power dynamics are fully on him. And It's supposed to be, I think, cute that he's like teasing her, but it is fully the exact same rapiness that Cavender or whoever was doing to her in the first place. There's just not other dudes involved. I think someone asked earlier, or said, Shelley did, how is Benedict any different from Cavender in the scheme of things, really? Sophie had no more choice with him, and that's 100% right. I mean, it's not one scary moment. The only difference between Benedict and Cavender, especially in this moment in the pond when he's naked and pulls her back by the ankle, I guess he's put his clothes on by then. Okay. But is that she actually wants him. She didn't want Cavender, but he doesn't know that. In fact, she's explicitly told him she doesn't. So it's rough. Not going to lie. And it doesn't get much better.
So from there, he says, like, you can get a job at my mom's house. Like, if you're not going to be my mistress, fine, I'll get you a job as a maid and I'll, at least you'll be safe. Why? If he cared about her so much, he was in love with her. He wanted to have their children and he would care for the children. Why didn't he just give her that tea service and let her go live her life? Like, he was still keeping her prisoner by sending her to her mother's house. He could have empowered her at any point along the way, and she was never empowered through their relationship. But that does take it. Oh, sorry, Julie. But that does take us to Violet and the sisters, who were like the most redeeming part of this whole book by far. They're so fantastic.
They're the best part, for sure.
They are. And I'm going to go back to Benedict for just 1 second, because we're also forgetting that this whole time that he's seducing Sophie, the whole time he's goading her and trying to get her into bed, he also has this other person that he has in mind. And it's the woman from the ball, the member of the ton that he doesn't know who it is, but he's going to marry that one. But he's going to be working his way towards Sophie. And that for me was there was nothing romantic. Somebody just put it, definitely not romantic or cute. And that's actually the perfect way to describe Benedict throughout this. Not romantic or cute. And I never once felt a connection to their relationship, because the whole time, even though we all know through dramatic irony, she's the woman, he doesn't. He's in his mind saying to himself, I am going to marry somebody else. This stranger that I've only met really once, but I want her. I'm going to pursue her. And he kind of has this weird internal conflict the whole time.
I kind of think that he's not really interested in marriage or really even marrying his mystery woman. He thinks about it a couple of times, but for the most part, he gets to a point with Sophie where he's perfectly fine with her just being his mistress. And if this was, any kind of modern romance, what he's saying is, earlier than she ever does, I want to be with you. And she's rejecting him. Mm-hmm. So there is a dynamic that Sophie is the one rejecting Benedict. And what he's actually offering her, the offer from the gentleman, is actually not that bad of an offer for a person in the position that he thinks she's in. Now, the way he goes about it is shitty as hell. But the offer to be his mistress, for him to, because that is not a position of no power. That's actually a very empowered position for a woman in that era to be kind of risen above. It's not that she would have no social status. She would just have a different social status than the women of the ton who have perfect status. She would be very high in what you would call impolite society. She'd be able to go to all of the, not balls, but she'd be able to go to the opera. She'd be able to go to all of the clubs and do all of the things that, say, the modiste that we see Benedict in the show have an affair with, right? She wouldn't be outcast from society. She would just be in a different class of society. And because she'd be Benedict's mistress, it's a higher position. So his offer is not bad. It's just that he's blackmailing her into it and then coercing her into it instead of offering it to her freely. And eventually he does offer it to her freely, but this is after he has wheedled her into his world in a way that she can't get out of. But I don't think I think the offer itself is actually meant to be a really good deal. There's no way to look at it. I mean, he's asking her to be with him. He's not asking her really to debase herself because he thinks that he's elevating her in that way. Thoughts?
No, that is true. And that brings in that the conflict may have actually just been that she was a bastard who was like horribly abused. And so in any other situation, sure, I could see exactly what you're saying. Makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. So why do you think that then Violet and Eloise wanted her to be his mistress? Or do you think that they were looking for marriage there?
I think Violet and Eloise are wise to the fact that she is not who he thinks she. I mean, immediately she's like, this girl reads French. Like, you're crazy if you think that she is like just nobody. You know, this girl is somebody, and you should figure it out. Probably. Like, I love Violet in this book because she's like she calls him right out on it. You know, she's like, this is not who you think it is. Like, she has secrets, and maybe think about that.
Yeah, I don't think that they wanted her to be his mistress. I think what they want is for them to be in love. It's kind of silly. There's no reason for them to think that she's aristocratic. There's no reason for them to think that she's capable of being somebody that he can marry, especially Eloise. But I did like the parallel that Violet is telling him by the point she's realized that he's in love with her. Violet says, if you want to marry somebody from the servant class, I will support you, which number one is hugely like forward thinking for anybody of that era, but also has like a really kind of nice modern parallel with, you know, like LGBTQ families and parents that would just be like, marry whoever you want. I'm here for, you know, before that was legal or whatever you want to do. I'm here for you. You might get some, you know, blowback from society.
Mm-hmm.
You might lose friends. You might be ostracized in certain ways, but I will always support you and be here for you no matter what.
Right.
And I liked that parallel in terms of what Violet was saying to him at that moment in the book. It gets blown out of the water because instead of Sophie really being a servant who he marries anyway, she becomes and is, you know, aristocratic enough.
Right.
And then they spin a tale with Araminta to make the rest of the ton be okay with her. It'd be like, and, you know, a parent of an LGBTQ kid being like, yeah, marry whoever you want, but we're going to have the whole world think they're really a dude. You know, I mean, like it's that kind of thing. Like
Right.
it, instead of just really accepting her for what she and who she is, not what she is, but who she is, they have to change who she is for it to be acceptable. And that sucks. But before that, at the very least, you get this nice little metaphor for the real world.
I think of all of the interactions in the book and the relationships in the book, I actually liked Violet's relationship with Sophie more than I liked Sophie's relationship with Benedict. And I thought that she like Andy said, she knew exactly off the bat who this girl is not a member of the servant class. What her knowledge, how she carried herself, how she spoke, how she acted, that was not. She knew, she was like, oh, this girl's part of the ton. Something's going on, but I'm not going to push her. I'm just going to talk to her. I'm going to talk to her like a human being would talk to her.
Right.
I
Which
just
is why,
wish-
how can Benedict not do that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I just wished Benedict could have actually done that. Those interactions with Violet, those should have been interactions that Benedict had with her. Instead, we got it through Violet, who then, and like Beth said, who says to her son, I don't care who she is. If you love her, marry her. We'll figure this out. Don't worry. We'll figure this out. But instead, you know, Benedict had his own issues.
Yeah. I want to get to this question that Shelley has. Eventually, we can talk about the show, but I don't want to forget it. So Shelley said it's a shame, too, because Benedict seems the most woke on the show. Maybe Shonda is planning something different for him. Fingers crossed. 100%. But I want something totally different. So we'll see. We'll see. But I don't want to forget that. But whatever we're talking about, I want to make sure we talk about where we think the show's going with this eventually.
Okay, so let's just talk. We're going to wrap up Benedict whenever he realizes that Sophie is the mystery woman in silver. And that moment, he is so mad. He is so mad that whenever she takes her mask off, she sees his face and she backs up because she's scared. And I think internally he says, like, I need to walk away because I don't want to hurt her. Like, this isn't who I am. I don't want to wrap my hands around her neck. And so it did not endear him to me in any way.
Which he does later. He wraps his hands around Araminta's neck. Like,
yes.
Dude's got
You're right.
a violent streak, but go ahead.
But they play that violent streak. It's played like it's alpha, or like it's, like, oh, he's just a man who's not in charge of his baser instincts. And it's just, it didn't work for me. And then she goes like crawling to him for forgiveness. And did they consummate their relationship before he found out or after? I can't remember. Was it before? Okay. Do you guys remember what was the context of them consummating the relationship? I can't remember how that happened.
She goes over there.
Yeah.
It's right after she sees Araminta and Rosamond and Posy on the street, and she's freaking out, and he comes out of his mother's house and he's like, come with me. And she's like, no. And he's like, I'm 5 houses away. And she's like, what? I didn't know you were that close. And so they go there and she's just like sitting on the couch, and then they end up having sex.
Okay, but once again, she was in the position of a victim where like she was traumatized and then gets taken advantage of on the couch of his sitting room. She deserved better. Justice for Sophie.
And then he says, now you have to become my mistress. Here it is. You have to become I gotcha. It was one of those like gotcha moments. And it was like, oh my gosh, no. This is not romantic in any way, shape, or form. I don't like gotcha.
Yeah. And she does say, I want you. Like they do like the perfunctory, is this a thing you're going to do? But one thing he does say is like, do you want to do this? Because you need to tell me now. Because if you tell me 10 minutes from now, I'm not going to listen. Like, I get it. The book is 20 years old, but like, it's the barest minimum of consent in this.
Marita has a really good
I was going to say that, Julie.
She says the problem is he blackmails her and says that he'll accuse her of stealing from him. Later on, Araminta accuses her of the same thing. And yet we're supposed to think it's romantic when he does it. And so I think the problem there is that Sophie doesn't have a problem with the fact that he did all of this. Like, and again, she's been abused. Her dad died at what? When she was, is it 10? Yeah, it's like 10, I think. And she's just abused. They lock her in closets. They require her to work constantly for no wages. She's lied to about her status in the world. And so I think that, the fact that she sees him as some sort of savior and doesn't equate what he's doing with the way that she's been treated before is problematic for her. And this book just does no work at all in rescuing her from her own issues and her own trauma. It just works to push them together, and that's it. Right.
She could have, Shelley said something. I don't know how to click people's comments and put them on the screen, but if you scroll up a little bit, she said that her biggest problem with Sophie was that she had all these excuses in her head why she didn't tell anyone why she was an Earl's bastard. But none of them made any sense at all. I mean, Violet was so kind to her. Like, there was absolutely no reason. Like, the Bridgertons, who are supposed to be this super powerful family, it's like Sophie knew who the Bridgertons were, right? Yeah, she knew who they were. She knew they were super powerful and that she could easily have gone to them and been like, hey, by the way, I'm an Earl's bastard and my awful stepmother could easily get me out of jail. Like, she wants to like accuse me of something and I swear I didn't do it. Like, help me out. You don't think to do that? It makes no sense.
Yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot of like, I mean, there's the idea that because she wasn't raised in the ton and she wasn't raised out in society, that she really doesn't know what anyone's going to do about this. I mean, Lady Whistledown doesn't really prepare one for coming out as a bastard to people you just met. So there's that idea that like, she really doesn't know what's going to happen to her should she do this thing. And obviously no one stood up for her in her life. None of the servants, none of her governesses, no one was like, this is a thing you can overcome, because she's supposed to be his ward and that's supposed to protect her. The problem is that, she doesn't have any reason not to tell Benedict once he's kind of fallen for her.
Right.
I understand maybe not bringing it out to Lady Bridgerton, but when it becomes evident that he wants her to be his mistress and why not just be like, this is who I am? And then for him to fall in love with her because he tells her, you know who you are and you have principles, and that's new to me. I wanted to be like, is it though? And does she know herself?
Right.
So it's all kind of doesn't gel. The puzzle pieces of why they're in love with one another are not clear in the least.
I never felt an emotional connection between the two characters. It was very much, as Alicia Butler wrote, there's a reason I nicknamed Benedict Benedict, because Benedict, he acts like a dick, and I think he thinks with it. And I never felt that he had some type of deep, unlike, Daphne and Simon, Anthony and Kate, you actually, yes, there's physical attraction between, but there was something deeper, very much below the surface. I never got that with Sophie, and I never got that with Benedict. Never. And it should have been. There should have been, because of her past, because of her trauma, because of how he gravitates towards saving her. Having that trauma and having somebody be like, I'll take care of you. I don't care who you are. I'll take care of you. That would have been a rich storyline for her to finally say, this is who I am. This is what happened to me. And then to go forward from there. Unfortunately, it never went below the surface.
I think, though, that there were, once it all was resolved, which we need to talk about the jail scene. Once it was all resolved and they had that bathtub scene and he's doing like, 7, I think that it sounds like 11. It sounds like midnight. Once he got his way, he was very sweet. He just had to get his way first, which is, I guess, the most abusive thing ever. But there's one line in this book. Benedict says, I burned for you. Anthony or Simon is not the one who said that. That is a Benedict line, and I hope they get to, I don't know, what are they going to do for Benedict to redeem him after that?
They took it from Benedict because he sucks so much.
Does Simon never say that in his book? Oh. I hate that line, so I don't care. It doesn't, it fits that it's Benedict's. It's a stupid line. Also, when he tells her that, it's right after I think it's the super mad nursery scene when he's figured out that she's the mystery woman, and he puts his hand on her dick, puts her hand on his dick. And that's when he says that, which is sexual assault. Yep. So I'm going to go down with the Benedict's a Benedict ship. That's none of that's good. It's not sexy. I didn't even read their sex scene. I was like,
It didn't resonate. It didn't stick with me after I was done. It was just, I read through it, and it was, because once again, for me, there was not that emotional connection between the two. Sure. I wasn't like craving, like once Anthony and Kate got together, once Daphne and Simon finally consummate,
Here's where the emotional part of this book comes in. And this is like the only scene where I was like, oh, my heart. Colin and Penelope's scene. Can we just talk about Colin and Penelope's scene for a minute? It's the best scene in the book. It is, number one, just as my little history of Bridgerton, when I read the Bridgerton novels, I read the first 2 and then I read the 4th one. I skipped Benedict's book because I'm prescient like that. I somehow knew it was a piece of shit. So I read Colin and Penelope's book, and that scene, if you haven't read it yet and you come up to it, it's replayed in Colin and Penelope's book from Penelope's perspective. But I didn't know this existed before. And it ripped my heart out. I love both Colin and Penelope in that scene. And to be honest, it's the best scene for Benedict as well. Also a great scene for Anthony because he takes Penelope home. But the best scene in the book is the only one where my heart ached at all. And it didn't have shit to do with Sophie and Benedict.
None.
It was the best scene in the book. Also
Oh.
good was Violet taking Araminta to task in the jailhouse. But nothing with Benedict and Sophie. None of that like mattered to me at all. At all.
No.
So
And
how
that's
would you want? Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
That's okay. And that's what's sad. Because this whole thing, if you think about how many pages, this should have been us talking about how much we loved this couple. And instead we're getting these moments with Colin and Penelope, Violet. Yeah. And the reason why we love those moments is we are seeing who their true characters. They are who they are.
I love what Marita just said, compared this story that revolves around the lack of consent and problematic power dynamics to Francesca and Michael's that are all about consent. Just get ready. I want everybody to just take a deep breath and be like, we only have 2 more books before we get to the best book, which is Francesca's book.
Ultimate. That book is so good. I'm sorry that we're not talking about it right now.
Hands down. Look at Alicia, Francesca's book, my favorite of the series. I could read it over and over. They do get better from here. I mean, Gregory's is also kind of wacky, but Francesca's book is so good. And 100% about consent and 100% about character. You know from page 1 who Michael and Francesca are to each other. And it is everything. So yeah, we can't talk about it right now, but I do love it.
Benedict, you know what else is annoying about Benedict is the fact that he needs Sophie to build him up so much. Like the art thing, it just kills me. Like it's like he has, and at least the show, I think maybe we shouldn't talk about the show yet, but at least the show like made him like kind of start like his art forays and like have a little confidence in himself. But like, she's like, has to constantly remind him how brilliant he is and like how amazing he is. And it's just so frustrating that it's like, you don't build her up at all. And all you do is expect her to be like, my art, I can't do it.
The only thing that they really praise her for is the fact that she doesn't act like a servant, which is really dehumanizing in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. That's her skill.
So what do we think about the resolution of this book, unless we have something else to say? Like the jail scene, Araminta screeching and Posy coming in. And I have to say, the ending for Posy is a little problematic. There's no way that the Bridgertons are capable of just adopting Posy out of her home and everything being fine. Also, I don't remember Posy being in another book. So what the fuck happened to Posy?
She's in the second epilogue. Did you read the second epilogue?
No.
Oh, so the whole second epilogue is about Posy falling in love with, I think, the local minister.
Yeah, the vicar.
Yeah, and it's actually like it's insta love, but it actually works. Like I prefer Posy's love story, all 50 pages of it, over Sophie and Benedict's. But
like that epilogue was written recently.
Yes.
So for years, there's been no ending for Posy, and she didn't show up in another novel.
True.
No.
Didn't somebody? Oh, I think they mentioned her in other second epilogues. They like who's kid? Oh, in Eloise's book, Posy is also mentioned in another second epilogue. Like because Posy, I think, has another kid or something like that, and you're like, oh, Posy, my Aunt Posy or something. You're like, whatever.
I think Posy's. Someone's going to correct us, I'm sure, but I think Posy's children are in a second series. Like Posy's children end up with some of the Bridgerton kids in a second series, like grandkids in a second series, I think.
Posy's to the books as Francesca is to the first season of Bridgerton, the show. She just all of a sudden just disappears. We don't know. You kind of forget about her until the very end. You're like, I'm talking about Francesca, the series, not Francesca, the book. It was great. But all of a sudden you're like, oh, Posy.
It seems like Julia Quinn forgot about Posy and eventually went back and wrote second epilogues and was like, other people have been like, you have this whole ass character that the Bridgertons adopted. Where the fuck is she? And she put her in the second epilogues until she decided to do a different series. Right. So, I mean.
And it was odd, though, that Posy became the hero in this book where she took the blame for stealing the shoe clip because it just came out of nowhere. Sophie didn't even have the chance to win that. Like everyone else got to be the hero in that whole scene, and Sophie just got to be the one who got rescued again.
Especially because she really did steal the shoe clips.
I know. She did. She did.
She really did do it.
Stop talking, Posy.
It would
Why
have been
didn't
different
you
if
just-
like someone had done it for her. Like maybe Posy had stolen them for her and given her the money early on instead of it being something that Sophie really did. Or another, another servant did it for her so that she could escape. Like there's a million other ways it could have been that Sophie didn't actually steal the thing that Araminta is going to get her arrested for later on.
Okay,
Ugh.
can we talk really quickly though about so this is who Sophie has been throughout this whole book. Kind of has taken on this almost kind of victim role, has been, abused, and then all of a sudden just somehow gets it into her and punches Araminta in the face in this jail. Like, now I'm going to stand up, and punches Araminta. I would have liked for her to punch Benedict a couple of times or pushed him or done something, slapped him a little bit.
Yeah.
But instead we get this moment, and some people have commented like, oh, she got to punch Araminta in the face. That's a good part. And I'm like, she should have done it earlier. Just do it.
So how do you think this is all going to play out on the show, though? Do you think they're going to stick to this storyline, or it's going to be something totally different? Do we get by Benedict?
I mean, okay, I made no bones about how I feel about Benedict. Benedict is already bi-curious in the show. Whether or not they have explored it, he is watching with intensity, and he is talking to whatever the guy's name is, I can't remember, very curiously about his relationship. So Benedict is already canonically bi-curious. Now, whether or not Shondaland and Chris Van Dusen are going to feel the need to explore that with him in the show is something we can only pray to the goddess for. But I cannot see them taking this story and being like, this is a season of television we need to make. I would be beyond shocked if we get Sophie and Benedict's story as an entire season, or even as an addendum to Colin and Penelope's season, for instance. It's just too poorly drawn and too silly, and doesn't put either one of them in a good light. So I would be very happy if Benedict ends up with the modiste or a dude or no one, anything else.
The modiste would have kind of the same trend there as far as she's the lower class and accepting someone below their class. So I could see that happening.
And she's also she's actually faking. She's not really French. She's faking the whole entire, her whole, past.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's built on that. This one is just too problematic. There's no way, in order to fix this, you have to completely rewrite the entire book.
So do you guys think that the modiste could actually be taking the place of Sophie as like she's got something hidden, and or do you think that, I mean, because I personally would like him not to end up with anyone and just like go to his artist colony and like bang dudes for the rest of the series.
Same.
Like that's what I prefer, actually. But do you think that they'll go with the modiste route, or do you think that they'll go with the bi or gay route?
I think he has more exploring to do. I think that the modiste, and I can't remember her name, Madame Delacroix, is that it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I knew things were in my brain. She could be a prototype Sophie. Her name could be Sophie. I don't know that we ever find out what her first name is. It could potentially be that it's that. Somebody could look that up. But I mean, I think it's possible. She's already his mistress, which is better than, him trapping and kidnapping a young virgin and trying to get her to be his mistress. So she has that going for her. But I do think that it would be patently more interesting if Benedict is bi-curious. But the modiste also, Madame Delacroix, also has an in with the artist crowd. She was there with him, in one of these party/orgy things that they're going on. So like if they were going to do like a throuple situation, she's already kind of cool with it. So I mean, there's more to explore there than that, and I really cannot imagine them throwing Benedict in with a virgin that he kidnaps and sexually assaults later.
Her name is Genevieve on the show.
Okay.
Her name is Genevieve Sophie.
Not necessarily, but
not at all. Not at all.
Do we know much about the second season? Like, is it purely Anthony's book? Has anyone confirmed that?
Well, we could ask Emily, but I'm not sure she's in the chat anymore. Emma just said her name is a playoff of LaCroix, since there's tons of it in the writer's room per the Bridgerton official podcast. Who doesn't have LaCroix in their writer's room constantly? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with him on the show. I just can't. I can't see what they've built him up as at this point, turning into what he is in this book. I just can't see that. Those two things do not gel at all. Yeah.
Well, everybody in the chat is agreeing. Brett says Shondaland needs to overhaul Benedict's story. Alicia says, Andy, I'm okay with them doing a character swap. They still want that kind of they want Benedict to explore. I think he's more the show has made him an interesting character for me, more so than this book.
The show actually made me like him a little bit while I was rereading.
Right.
Now the book is worse the second time, but Benedict is better the second time because I'm imagining Luke, whatever his name is, and kind of the way he like lounges in his mom's house and the way he, makes jokes and the things that he cares about. Like I can see his like insouciance, like on the page because I've seen it on the screen. Whereas the first time I read it, I couldn't see that at all. He was just a dick.
Right.
And Emily said she has not seen scripts for the second season, so she doesn't know, but none of us know. I did see, and if you guys, I don't know if that it's come out yet. I did see that there was a rumor about Edwina casting. It's on our Instagram story. So go see what you think. Go look at her follows and see what you think about her potentially being Edwina. I love a good mystery. Alicia said, I watched the show before I read the book. I felt like it made me even more disappointed in the book. You think Benedict's going to have this great love story, and instead it's kind of like, whoa.
Brett just put, I love Benedict's relationship with Eloise. I love Benedict's relationship with his sister more than I loved his relationship with Sophie.
Well, in the book, there's not really much there.
No, there's not.
But on the show, for sure.
Right. The development is there. And they're both, in their sense, struggling, looking for more, searching for more. So, and I know some people could argue, well, that's what he's doing in the book. He's searching for more. He's trying to be this artist. He wants.
I think he's very listless in the book.
Yeah.
There's no searching. There's no searching for anything. At the very beginning, he's just at this party. I mean, he's not searching for anything. They've given him a lot more depth in the show than he has in this book, even though this is his book. Not looking for anything except the girl that he lost. And he's not really looking for her very hard anymore anyway. So it's just, it's not great. Not great, Bob. Not great.
Maybe he'll meet Sophie instead of at a masquerade, like at one of those orgies. And they'll be like, all I saw was the back of her thigh over so-and-so. And then, hey, I'm kind of into that.
Yeah.
They should have you in the writer's room.
If the masquerade is an Eyes Wide Shut situation, I'm more into it. Not Eyes Wide Shut. That's a terrible example of an orgy. But like, if it's an orgy situation, okay, that changes things a little bit. There's a little bit more consent involved in that situation. I still cannot imagine where this would go. And I certainly cannot imagine this being an entire season of television.
Right.
Emily says, Benedict was in love with the one woman who did not know him as number 2. And Sophie was in love with this romanticized version of Benedict from the Masquerade. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about the number 2 things. And Emily, I missed the first part of your comment was that you're biased. Emily, yes, we know you're biased. We're not offending you too much in this chat. But one of the points not touched on this conversation is how each of the 2 main characters in this book are in love with a fantasy version of the other. Benedict is not fully in love with Sophie at all. And unless he's fantasized about having a mistress who adores him or doesn't see him as number two or whatever. It takes him knowing that she's the mask girl to meld that into love. And it never really gels for me. But you're right that she is in love with who she thinks Benedict is, but also the real Benedict does come to the real Sophie's rescue the second time that they meet. And so she's not just in love with the fantasy version of him. She falls in love with the version that really did help her. But the fantasy version is what lets her push away all of his bad behavior. So it's the fantasy that she's been building up and building up and building up that lets her go, oh, he's treating me like shit, but I still want him. Or, this has been shitty, but I need to not be around him, but also I love him. So yes, it's very teenagery in that way. She has a very teenage romanticized version of who he is and is willing to overlook all of the stuff that he's doing and saying and doesn't know him. So in that case, yes, very much it's a fantasy version.
And he is most disappointed in Sophie whenever she doesn't live up to his fantasy. And that's what I meant by the manic pixie dream girl. Like, as soon as she has anything that's difficult about her, he's ready to throttle her. And so, yeah.
Anytime she rejects him, it's really about rejection.
Yeah.
Like, he's being rejected over and over and over again. It's like I said, like in a perfect world, in a modern world, he would be asking her the thing that we want a hero to ask the girl, which is just be with me. It's just that she wants something different because she wants it to be respectable. And he's aware that he's giving her the best that he has to offer in this moment. And it isn't until his mom's like, well, I'd be okay with it if you wanted to marry somebody of the servant class, that he starts to think about, well, maybe I can offer her more. So there are redeeming qualities to what Benedict is doing. It's not fully Benedict's an asshole, Benedict's an asshole, Benedict's an asshole, or they don't know each other well. There is elements of that. And that is kind of what you get when you read the whole thing. But there are elements that he is doing what he can to offer her the best that he can. Yeah. And it takes melding the fantasy with the reality of who she really is to get him to see he could offer her even more. Right. So it's not a terrible romance in that way. Those are tropes that we see throughout. It's just the things that get us there, the kidnapping, the threatening, the blackmailing, the sexual assaults that he, pushes on her. Those things turn all of the other stuff about it that's not quite right, because it is into insta magic love and turns it into something that you're just kind of like, ay, Benedict, oi, quit it.
Emily did put, they were then each irrationally angry at themselves for not, sorry, the comment just disappeared. They were then each irrationally angry at themselves for not being able to embrace the person in front of them, and angry at the person in front of them for not being the person of their dreams. And I think right there is the issue right there, is the fact that they have this idealized version of each other? Do they know each other? It's the sense of not knowing each other.
Well, then, like, for me, there should have been more getting to know, if there had been more exploration of who they are with one another. If there had been a moment where, again, if she had been sick, or if there had been ways in which they could have gotten to know one another. And the thing is the constraints of Regency make that impossible. There's no way for a lord to get to know a female servant in any real way. There's no opportunity for anything like that. So it's almost like they're having to steal moments in order to spend any time together, and they aren't enough. Especially when you're used to long conversations and banter and balls and all of the other things that tend to be what is the fuel for romance in these books.
Emma brought up a really great question. She said, do you think he would have still married her if she was truly from the servant class?
Great question.
I think, honestly, even though I don't love this book, I think at the end, yes. Just because I feel like he's sort of reconciled. I mean, he doesn't really like being part of society. They say it a gazillion times throughout the book. And I think with the support of his family, like, he already has that little cottage. He's fine just living there. So personally, I think yes.
And I think too, and to Benedict's credit, he has been raised in this environment, the ton, for how old is he in this book?
30.
30. So for 30 years of his life, he has been conditioned. This is how the ton works. So to his credit, when his mother finally says to him, probably something she's never really said to him before, I don't care who you marry. I don't care if the person is rich or poor, if she's a servant or she's the queen. As long as you're happy.
And he has that conversation with Colin when they're fencing, and Colin's
Right.
you don't even like it here. Like, this will give you a
Right.
chance to get away. Just go
Absolutely.
marry the girl and do
And
what
you
makes
guys
happy.
move. Essentially, move. Just move.
And they do. I mean, if you read the other books,
Right.
Sophie and Benedict do not live in London. They spend all of their time out,
take off.
out in the country, and
Right.
they don't really interact. And part of it's because of who she is.
Right.
I think, Emma, to answer your question, yes.
Mhm.
I think by the end of the novel, he would have married her if she was truly from the servant class. The question for me is, would he have married her if she hadn't been the mystery lady? Because that conflation is what allows him to look past her station. But if she had been a servant who dressed up and went, if she really had not been, this byblow of an earl, which is just the dumbest thing in the whole, not even just the word byblow, we talked about that once, but like the idea that the blood itself is like a thing that allows you to like look past. Anyway, if she'd really been a servant, would he have married her? Not that, but if she hadn't been the mystery woman, would he have married her? And that I'm not sure about. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I think he would have always been holding out for that perfect, like the perfect woman who's perfect for him. I'm not sure that he would have. I'm not sure.
And sometimes it's hard to let that go. I mean, he was really intent on it.
He would have to lick her arm to find out.
Let me taste that salt.
Let me taste that salt. Forget the shoe. Don't try on the shoe. Let me lick the inside of your arm.
Yeah, I think that it had, I think it's the conflation of the mystery woman and Sophie together that allows him to make the jump. I think that without that, he wouldn't have, which is, yes, she is that woman, right? So it's neither here nor there. But if he had never known that, I don't think he would have made the right choice. I really don't. I think he wouldn't have married her. I think he would have held out and just kept asking her to be his mistress, which sucks. So, and then if you think that, if you're like me and you think that, like, does Benedict really grow? Because he does get to marry the mystery woman, and he does get his mother's approval before he does. And he does get to kind of leave the ton and not have to worry about it. So what does Benedict really sacrifice in the end? Or how does he grow? I mean, you know what I mean?
Benedict got what he wanted from the very beginning.
Emily says he realized he loved Sophie before the blind man's bluff game. He decided to marry her.
So
does he?
Yeah.
Does he say, I'm going to marry her before he goes to the blind man's bluff? I guess yes, because he has a conversation with Colin, right?
Right.
Fine,
so Sophie,
Emily.
Sophie was Sophie, and that was everything he needed. All right. Thank you, Emily.
I don't like being wrong.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, so he grows some.
There we go. There we go.
This much.
A teeny little bit.
That's what she said. Emily had to look it up. Thank you for looking it up. I appreciate that. That's a good place to leave it. We're proud of Benedict for his growth. We really hope there's a new story to him in the show. I think that he deserves better, and whoever Sophie might be portrayed by or as on the show, I think she deserves better too. Give us, something a little less traumatic. Good book club, you guys. Excellent book club. Yay. We will be doing another Bridgerton book club in 2 weeks. We're doing Eloise's book. So you guys, if you are at all interested in more Bridgerton book club, we'll be right back here, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. What? Why are y'all looking like that? Is it Easter?
Is it Colin's book next?
Colin's book.
Yeah.
Also,
but
it might be Easter.
Is Easter.
It's also Easter. Should we move it? Fine. We will do Bridgerton book club very shortly.
I was going to make a very inappropriate Easter joke. It's fine.
Something about Okay. It's Colin's book. It's Colin's book, and I'm sorry I said Eloise. We got to do Colin and Penelope. But it won't be in 2 weeks because some of you are still Christians. Fine. That is the meanest thing I've ever said.
I'll skip
Seriously.
Easter.
It's actually the day after my second shot. So I'm bracing myself for whatever is going to happen.
Oh yeah. You know what? Is that the 4th?
It's
April the 4th.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting my shot that week too. I'm getting my shot on the 31st. My second shot.
So
Nice,
just bracing for whatever is happening. I mean, I've already purchased the Tylenol, and thank you for it. So I'm just not that it happens to everybody, but I'm just bracing. So
all right. Well, Bridgerton Book Club's coming back. I would probably look at it for somewhere in mid-April. Because we have Grisha Book Club coming up next week. So if you've read Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo, we're going to be talking about that in preparation for that show hitting Netflix. And if you don't know anything about it, you will like it. You will like it. And you should read the book with us and chat with us about it next week. All right, you guys. Bye. Thanks for joining us.